Hi, everyone. This is Rico with Peachtree Corners Life, publisher of Peachtree Corners Magazine. Thank you for coming. I'm here with Brian Johnson, our city manager of Peachtree Corners. Hey, Brian, how are you?
Rico, good. How are you?
Good. Good to have you here. Today, we're going to be talking to Brian we're going to be exploring a few things. One is about public safety and how the city is helping one part of our community because of specific reasons there, about helping them being able to create a district there to bring public safety measures to that district possibly in the future that may be needed. The other thing is that we're going to be talking about the forum and the sale of the forum. And if you're not aware of that, you should be aware of that. And if you're not aware of that, just by looking at the forum, I mean, I think the last time I was in there, drove through a few days ago, counted maybe 14 closed stores. So it's definitely something that is important to this community. We'll be discussing about that too. So, Brian, let's. I know we're getting towards the holidays here, so it's always good to be able to talk to you and get some stuff. I do want to. We did touch upon something else that we talked about last time, and that was the street corner takeovers. Not that we have to talk necessarily about it full on about it, but anything new about that? I know the intersections at Spalding Drive, Peachtree Corners, and at Spalding Drive and Peachtree Parkway were taken over at some point over the last month or two. I'm seeing wheelies like the skid marks in different intersections. Anything new that you can share with us about what's going on?
Well, there's a couple things we're working on. I mean, again, what we're trying, the street racing, intersection takeovers, a phenomenon all of Metro Atlanta is fighting right now. These car clubs are creating events that are so are I guess outrageous enough that it gets viewers on YouTube, and then when you get views on YouTube, you can make
Yes,
advertising money.
right.
And so that's what they're doing, and they do it. Then they get the money and spend it on their cars, and they, pimp their cars out even more, and it's just a vicious cycle. So a couple of constraints that happen. One is they'll come in here and take the intersection over, and they'll tape over their license plate. Oftentimes,
Hmm.
and so then our license plate recognition cameras, if they happen to be at an intersection that has it or we can trace it, you won't be able to read it. So that's one thing they'll do. Second thing is they know the law, and the
Hmm.
law is such that the police, by policy, cannot apprehend them in a car chase because it's a misdemeanor.
Right.
So police cannot get into a high-speed chase of any sort over a misdemeanor, and all of these traffic citations are misdemeanors.
Hmm.
So they know that, and so they kind of, when police show up, they all hightail it out of there. Police are, unable to do anything as far as chasing them. License plates covered, and so that's kind of a constraint now. And again, these are impromptu, if you will, so it's also hard
Sure.
to know what's going on. One of the intersection takeovers we had, recently, the last one was literally just a couple of hours after the police had basically stopped all non-essential stuff and were looking for that little girl whose mother
Yes.
had, notified police that she was, a highly autistic 9-year-old, I think,
Hmm.
but was lost.
Hmm.
And so it was like all hands were looking for her in the area at the time this intersection takeover happened. So anyway, that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah.
What we're looking
Okay.
to do is a couple things. Is one, the city went ahead and became one of the pilot programs, if you will, for flocks LPR cameras that have an enhanced capability beyond just the license plate of of I guess placing a be on the lookout for not just the license plate, but also defining characteristics of an
Right.
automobile. So, for
Like.
instance, if like the front headlight was busted out of a Honda Accord
Hmm.
a certain year, Flock can look for that, not just the license plate, and send a, or if it's got a certain decal on it that's big enough to see. And so that'll help
Hmm.
because these cars oftentimes are very unique. And so instead of just reading license plates, they can read, unique
It's almost
marks
like
the
well,
police do with tattoos on certain plates of a person's body.
yeah, like
So we
fingerprinting almost.
Right. So we went ahead and upgraded our service with Flock to be able to do that. And of course, the police have that capability. Two is we're looking into a technology that exists in which the police, by virtue of the front of their police cruiser, or
Mm-hmm.
there's a handheld device, but they can they can deploy a GPS tracking device onto the back of or onto a vehicle. It's a magnetic device, and you shoot it, and it attaches to the car. That might allow for the police then to follow that automobile at their leisure, so they're not in the in a high-speed chase.
Sure.
They just follow it to where it stops, and they do it there. And the last thing is we are going to be looking to pursue maybe an amendment to the state law regarding this.
Okay.
Through lobbying the General Assembly this upcoming session to maybe strengthen the law as it relates to the automobiles that are used in these crimes, and they are crimes, while they may be misdemeanors, but go after the automobiles by allowing police to seize automobiles that are used in the commission of this crime. And the hope might be that if these things are being done because these these people who are involved in it are wanting to make money to put it back into this this baby of theirs, this vehicle, well, if they risk losing that that baby of theirs, maybe they'll be less inclined to do it in the first place.
Yes.
So we're going to pursue legislation regarding that this session. So that's kind of what the city is doing, what we can do to try to prevent or prosecute some of this. But as it stands, it's a difficult thing, and it takes 3 convictions before you can even get into it. May be considered a felony, and so it's a lot of work. It's unfortunate, and we're not the only ones dealing with it, but at least the city is doing something what we can.
Sure. And that legislation sounds like that would probably be the best thing, actually. All right. As far as public safety, I know that the city council was looking at fees and assessments to special districts. And part of that is specifically to a certain area, and we've discussed this before a little bit. But now the city council has looked at this this past session. So that was having to deal with being able to tax a certain area because of wanting to possibly put in license plate recognition systems, speed humps, or other services that a residential area is not able to do themselves for a certain reason. So why don't you explain a little bit briefly about that and where the city council is going with that?
There are 3 services that you kind of mentioned that oftentimes are should be considered something that is just not deployed equally across the entire city. And that would be street lighting, especially into residential, deep residential streets that are not connectors, are not deployed, have not been deployed equally. There are some locations that there's just not enough or any street lights. So that's one service. Speed humps used to, mitigate speed. That is not deployed everywhere in the city, but it is something that can be deployed. And then license plate recognition cameras, in the case where a particular neighborhood or community may want one because they would like to be able to offer this up to police if there was some crime committed there. All 3 of those are available to areas of the city, neighborhoods within the city. They're available really through 2 means. The easy one is each of them can be achieved by having a petition and achieving a certain threshold. It's usually between 2/3 up to 80% of favorable. And if you achieve that within the affected area, and there's also some definitions of what the affected area is and everything. So if you achieve that, the city will put those services in, and we will apportion the cost of that service annually onto the affected home property owners on a pro rata basis. Speed hump and LPR camera are done by just taking the amount of properties that are benefiting from the service in the affected area and just dividing it by the cost of that particular service per year. And it's placed on that property's, that parcel's property, tax bill, and that's how they pay it. So, if an LPR camera was $120 or say $1,200 a year, and there were 120 homes, what would that be? $10 a home per year, and that would be on their property tax bill, and we're off to the races. On the street lights is the one that's different, and that one is assessed based on the linear foot road frontage of parcels. So if the more frontage on a street, the theory goes that you benefit more from having enhanced street lighting because you have more street frontage. Both of these methods are very common and on how to do it. So those thresholds are out there. So communities can do it on their own. But what we are talking about here is a unique second way for it to happen. And it's much more constrained, but it was created based on historical evidence that there may be situations in which it's impossible for a community to achieve the threshold necessary, but the need is there. Okay. And the main one, there could be more, but then the one in question was a community that the city had determined could stand to have some public safety enhancements because there were problems. For instance, speed had been determined to be higher than it needed to be. Like there was a speeding problem. Average speed, is 25, or excuse me, the speed limit's 25, but the average speed was like 45. I mean, that's a speeding problem.
Sure.
So we had determined there was a speeding problem. We had determined that the crime in the area was high enough, and you don't want any crime, but there could be so infrequent that this isn't the case. But the crime was high enough that it could stand to benefit from both enhanced street lighting and an LPR camera. And then the Georgia Power also did a lighting assessment saying, yes, this is below our industry standard threshold of saying that this neighborhood is lit to a acceptable standard. So we had determined that there was a need in all three, but the community had attempted in the past to achieve these thresholds by petition, but they couldn't because in one particular case, there is an individual who owns a large share of the townhomes in this community. And so he essentially has veto power. He owns like 50 plus of these, and he turns around and he rents them out. So he's a landlord, and he's not wanting to see these increased costs on his property tax bill. And so he's been saying, no, I'm not going to accept it. So the community came to the city council and said, look, we'll never be able to achieve your standard as long as his finger is on the scale, because he can tip it, unilaterally. So council took, use the tools they have at their disposal, which is the authority to create a special district. And what'll happen here is the vote that you're referring to, it defined the boundaries of these districts. So it set the boundary and said, here's a special district for public safety. And inside that district, there will be one more effort to achieve the standard, the petition's threshold. And if what we assume will happen again, and that is this one property owner will end up saying, no, I'm not for it, they can come back to the city and say, here, proof that we tried, there's proof that we can't achieve the standard. Will you please step in? And the city does have the power to then assess these special assessments on the property based on the way that the equation or And we did it, and they will impose it versus the petition telling us that the residents want it. That's where we're headed. What this did was define the boundary, and the
Right.
next time it's in front of them, which could probably be as soon as 90 days if the community jumps on it, could be them coming back and saying officially one last time, we
Yeah.
tried, we couldn't do it. Would you please do it for us? And that's what this is.
That's a great way for the city to be proactive for its citizens. Unfortunately, there's always situations like this, right, where one person can control so much property, like individual properties, equity, homes, and things can't get done.
Yeah.
That's a sad thing. And we're moving towards that, right? Was it Blackwell Real Estate Investment Holding Company holding lots of properties? I mean, Zillow just had decided they were going to let go of 2,000 homes they owned, and because they were trying to be in the flipping business, and they're going to be probably selling it to one buyer. So there's going to be more of that happening out there. I think less individual ownership and more bulk ownership of these properties.
Hey, Rico, you bring up one other point that has just hit our radar screen really 48 hours ago.
Hmm.
Speaking of ownership and call it irresponsible in some case ownership, we had a situation uncovered here in a neighborhood, Peachtree Station, actually, in
Really?
which a property owner had used a company. I believe the company is called PadSplit. And what this company does is it basically will it'll take an equity product and it'll split it up into
Hmm.
lots of different subspaces, almost like they're renting rooms out.
Yes, I've seen
And
that.
it was brought to our attention, and an owner there had been advertising for as many as 10 rooms in one house in Peachtree Station. And so obviously, those homes in there are probably, there's 4, maybe 5 bedroom houses in there. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think any more
Mm-hmm.
than that. But when you're advertising that much, and we don't allow, first of all, it's not zoned for this. We don't allow short-term rentals less than 31 days.
Mm.
Anything short less than 31 day of rental is considered a hotel. And so it's a whole different. So you can't do this. It's in violation of our code.
Right, so
We've reached out.
people can't do Airbnb or
This is
VRBO
correct.
of their homes in the city of Peachtree Corners at all,
That's
versus
correct.
doing it and they get charged a hotel tax.
Right.
Okay.
But this one isn't even Verbo or Airbnb. This
Right.
one is this new company in which we actually heard that there was just a, if you want to call it, expose done by the AJC on the company, and they've got
Yeah.
some other shady practices as well. But breaking a house down to that it's problematic on a number of fronts.
Mm-hmm.
Everything from where do you park all those cars?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
And you just get into that kind of stuff. But my point to that is irresponsible ownership. Sometimes, us being notified of this, we wouldn't have known as quickly, but one of the owners noticed just a disproportional amount of traffic in this, and they haven't filled all 10, but they have started to fill the house with tenants already.
Wow. And isn't
And
there already an ordinance that says that certain amount of people can't be within a home that's unrelated or something? I know
there
Gwinnett
are
County, I think.
limitations. Not everybody has to be related, but there are limitations on
Yeah.
how many can't be. So yes,
Okay.
that's another constraint. I mean, there was this was a clear violation of it. And, we've already
Yeah.
issued a notice of violation to the homeowner, and, we will move on this quick. The reason I'm bringing it up today,
Uh-huh.
as fresh a target as it is just for those who may be in the community who have heard about this or are wondering where our stance is we absolutely do not allow this kind of stuff to happen. And
Mm-hmm.
we do not want our neighborhoods to end up getting into a situation where people are coming in and they're running some of these properties
Yeah.
as investment properties, and they're breaking them down, and there's transient And then there's like uber transient.
Yeah, yeah,
Where
yeah.
these people are renting a room. And I mean, nobody who rents a room is in a position where they have the same sense of ownership that you get
Hmm.
even from somebody who's renting the
Right,
whole house. And that's not even as much as somebody who owns the whole house. And so
right.
we don't want to get into that. And so there has been, rightly so, some you know
Yeah.
deep concerns by some of the people in the immediate area of this house, and we've had to say no, this can't happen, shouldn't have
Hmm.
happened. Thank you for
And
bringing it to our attention. We're on it, but it's not to say that it won't be tried elsewhere, and we'll keep going on it. We're going to have some public service announcements go out about this as well to try to prevent some of this from happening. But this is hot off the press, and just it'll be a month before you and I talk in this capacity. I just wanted to get it out there that city's going to
okay.
do what it can to prevent this from happening. But if it does, it's unfortunate. We'll jump on it with both feet and resolve it
And
with
that's
the property
and
owner.
that's called PadSplit, right?
I
You said?
believe that's the name of the company is
Okay.
PadSplit.
Okay. Now I've known people and stuff. I mean, there are people that will rent, an in-law suite or stuff like that. But I think that's that's not a bad thing. But I've also seen homes where, like you said, they're renting rooms. There may be 3 or 4 rooms being rented. You see 5 or 6 cars out there, or 10 cars. So it can get out of control. I know
Yeah.
with COVID going on and stuff, people have come back to live with their parents, or, couples have come back, families have come back and stuff. So there's a lot of that going on as well. But this is a whole different thing.
It
Taking a
is.
house and splitting it up into units that are legit, like they're just renting the units like a hotel, like
Right.
a
This is a house
extended stay
constructed
hotel.
to be a
Yeah,
single family detached residential. And then, I mean, for somebody to be saying there's 10, I mean, you're going to have people living in the, dining room and I mean, because these
yeah,
houses are, I mean, it's problematic on more fronts than, we need to even talk about, but it's just
yeah.
important to, for people to hear that the city's not going to, we're going to do what we can to prevent this from happening again through public
Hmm.
service. We're going to try to make our code be a little bit clearer so that
Sure.
if there is a homeowner who's like digging in to say, hey, can I do this? It'll be clear. So we're going to try to prevent it from happening. But if it does, it's unfortunate. We're on it. We do not want this to be another, occurrence, and certainly not a reoccurring consistent thing.
Right. Yeah, I can see how there are investors going out there to buy homes. I mean, I'm getting a call at least every day now asking me if my home's for sale. And I'm sure it's not just to sell the home, it's to do some of these investment things. So,
Mhm.
but
Sure.
it's getting really annoying though, I'm telling you, getting these phone calls. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable. Um, let's move on to our last part, which is an ongoing thing that I always like to talk about because it's a big part of the community. The forum at Peachtree Parkway. Um, ever since I moved here in '95, just shortly after that, I mean, it has been a big part of the community. Then Town Center came along. It's also another big part. That whole complex of retail and place is, is sort of a heart of Peachtree Corners, right? I mean, it's the hub of what goes on retail wise and stuff. Unfortunately, in the last, what, 5, 6, 8 years, it's changed. The Forum has lost retail places in there. There's 14 plus empty storefronts. You may not realize it because of it being storefronts being painted and making look nice and papered over. So people may not realize casually that there are that many empty storefronts right now. I think the biggest, well, the more popular one is that's there right now. It's a pop up, and that's Lululemon. Uh, so my kids are like, that's popular for them, um, and that's a pop up store that's supposed to have been temporary, but I think now it's permanent. I think they're doing well enough to stay.
Oh, they're doing well.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know if their lease arrangement, but I do know they're doing very well.
yeah. I mean, at one point they were called a pop up
Right.
Lululemon,
They
but so I'm
started
not
that
sure.
way, absolutely.
Right. So now I understand that the forum, there will be some new shops opening. I think one of them is another retail women's clothing line store. maybe a Pilates, I think, maybe coming in, and I forget what the third one was. But
Oh,
still,
there's a restaurant called Chopped,
that was it.
Chopt.
Yes,
Chopped is coming
Chopped.
in. Yep.
That's right. That's right. And that's franchise, I think. So, I mean, they're trying to make some headways, but these are not, if you go to up the road, if you will, right, where it used to be Avalon, I forget what it's called now, they changed the name. You know, there are people going to other parts of Gwinnett County or Forsyth County, other shopping areas are a bit more engaging. There's places to hang out. The Forum is not one of those places you can think about hanging out. Um, when Caribou was there as a coffee house, you could probably hang out there a little bit, but there's really nowhere in the Forum that someone can say, let's go just, hang out there the same way they go
Maybe
to
Barnes and
Town
Noble.
Center.
Yeah, maybe Barnes
Yes,
and Noble, but that's about
correct.
it. Yeah.
Right, that's right. The Starbucks in there or just browsing the books and stuff for sure. And let's hope that stays there because the way books are sold online, I'm still impressed that the Barnes and Noble is still there. Um, so it's up for sale, and that's not a secret anymore. And I know the city has tried to help previously with suggestions, and you're actually talking to 4 of 6 possible buyers now. Sharing with them what the city may be able to do or help them with and proposals and stuff. So give us a little breakdown of what the city would like to, what the city's able to do here, maybe, because God knows it needs it.
Well, it's important to, for me to double tap what you've already said, and that is, the Forum is an integral part of this community. It is, it can't fail. Let me put it that way, and the city will not let it. But it is important to note, though, that as retail and these types of developments have evolved, the Forum is finding itself having to evolve itself. So it's interesting, by the way, when you talk to the Gwinnett Place CID director, that
Yes.
within the Gwinnett Place Mall is located.
Mm-hmm.
He attributes 2 things to the steep downward trajectory, death, if you will, of Gwinnett Place Mall as being the place.
Right.
One is Mall of Georgia, which we all are like, yeah, it makes sense. And the other one
Right.
is the Forum.
Oh.
And he says, because that was the first step into what we see now, which is this mall-ish area, but it's not covered like we used to, like you and I had when we were growing up, Rico, where we're going
Sure.
to hang out at the mall.
Right.
All the stores were on the inside. You had the climate controlled space and you're walking through, and certainly those still exist. But we transitioned into this outdoor type of space, and the Forum was the first kind of step. But when they built the Forum, what they didn't do, and you can see this example in Avalon. And by the way, I did not know Avalon had changed names.
I thought they did.
Well, maybe they have.
Yeah.
But we know it as Avalon. We'll call it Avalon for the purposes of this, this podcast.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
But for those who've been to Avalon, Avalon took the Forum's kind of, site plan, and it added 2 other components that are key. One is gathering space, a public space for people to, for there to be various things, whether it's a pop-up concert or games or just, hanging out, sitting in chairs or whatever, but place to,
By the way,
hang out.
my mistake, it is Avalon. Sorry, I thought it had changed its name. So.
Well, I was going to say, Rico, certainly it could have changed, and I, got my nose to the grindstone and I missed it. But, but Avalon, when it was designed, they said, we're going to put in public space there for people to hang out, for us to have events or whatever, gathering space, and on-site residential.
Yes.
Walk up, and the importance there is on-site residential creates a stable customer base for the mix of uses that are there. And it's convenient and it's stable because people will not be discerning when it's convenient. If you are, if there's a pet store, a boutique pet store that's within walking distance of where I live, I will shop there even if it's more expensive versus to get into my car and go to some bigger, mass,
Sure.
pet place like PetSmart because it's convenient and I'm okay with paying a little bit more because it's convenient, but that produces a stable. So the forum doesn't have that. So that's one thing that it was struggling with is as Avalon then stole market share from the forum, forums left with the convenient type of crowd. And we've had that for a period of time. But then you throw in two other things, and that is one, retail in general is undergoing a metamorphosis. It's going through an evolution itself with the success of online shopping and Amazon and everything. And so in and of itself, retail was trying to figure out what are bricks and mortar retail. I'm sorry, bricks and mortar retail is figuring out
Right.
what are we going to be when the dust settles with this online shopping. So that was being figured out. Then COVID hit. And then that's created even more of, people weren't going into stores. Some stores couldn't make it. They closed, but yet others were not willing to take that leap of faith. So some of the storefront vacancies are a product of a pandemic, and it's not necessarily the forum. And I will say that even though the city didn't have a choice in the sense of we wanted to have community gathering space, really large, gathering space like we have with the town green, we did try to do what we could to ensure that the town center side did not cannibalize or cannibalized as little as possible from the forum by not really putting in bricks and mortar retail on the town center side, being more heavy restaurant. And then, of course, connecting it with the pedestrian bridge, trying to make it to where if you're on one side, it's easy to go to the other and you don't feel like, oh, we're not together. And so all of those things combined, when you just drop it on the forums, like, man, we're trying to scratch out a living here and there's a lot going on. Well, the owners, current owners, are unloading it. They have it currently out on the street for bids, and there are companies that are currently bidding on it. The current owners are selling it, as they've had informed me, as part of a list of properties within this company's portfolio across the country that share two common denominators. One is they do not have on-site gathering space, and the other is they don't have on-site residential units. And so they're unloading all of their properties that don't have those two things. And the forum, as a result, is, finds itself in a position where I think a new owner is going to maybe look to do something beyond just become a new owner and then just work hard to fill lease space. So that gets us up to where the city's involved. And, I go back to my first comment is we cannot afford for it to fail. The current owners had been reached out by us in a request for us to maybe sit down and discuss ways the city might partner with them to help them create and install public, gathering space at the forum to activate it, because we can see it on the town center side in the evening. Or even during the day, when you have like playgrounds and other stuff, people are at the town green, even in the middle of the day. Mom's got small kids or people hanging out. It's an excuse to do that. And then the forum doesn't have that. So it doesn't get that kind of convenient traffic. And then the evening, when basically the restaurant crowd is, kind of done, on the town center side, you still have people hanging out. And on the forum side, unless you're specifically going to shopping, window shopping like we remember growing up is not really done anymore. I think there's some pandemic components still, but there's certainly the online shopping where you're like, look, I don't need to go from store to store to figure out who's got what. I can do it from the comfort of my own home on a computer.
But I also feel that, yes, retail is changing. I order on Amazon, I use Instacart. I mean, but I do go to some stores. And I think that the unfortunate part to me, and I'm looking at it not just from my perspective of my demographic, if you will, looking at it from my young kids and what they would like to see and where they go, because they don't go to the forum for the most part. The stores aren't interesting enough. There are, they go to Avalon, let's say, they go to some of the other places, Lenox Mall. I mean, because retail is different and there's an experience there. Maybe there's something there that they, when people see a strip mall go up, they know there's going to be three things in there always: a nail shop, a salon, and something else like that, right? So it's the same stuff over and over again. Who wants to go there? And that's what happens with these types of retail places. Who wants to go there when there's nothing interesting?
It's
Sure,
a great
Belk's
point,
department.
Rico. Great
I
point.
mean, right? So the city helping, I think, and some of the things that I saw in the PDF that I had seen, some of the proposal, creating that open space, that gathering spot, when you talk about people being on the town green, it's not just people saying, well, there'll be people there that may want to shop or eat. It's the idea of energy, I think. It's the idea of
Yep.
social energy, right? There's something to be said when a place looks busy, where a place looks like things are happening. There's an energy about it. There's not that at the Forum. And I do see that on the town green on some evenings when the lights are turned on and it's getting dark and people are out there in their lawn chairs even and just hanging out on the town green or sitting on the side or and there's a place like Playa Bowl and other places there that you can get food at and just eat on the lawn. Can't do that with any of the stuff that's at the forum, and it won't attract that type of retail unless there's that type of stuff there. I mean, I just can't see that. Don't we don't want to see the same stuff over and over again, I guess.
I do think, Rico, you're hitting on another good point, and that is once you show that there is a reason for people to hang out, there's something to do, space to do that, I think you're going to
Mhm.
start seeing some of the, space get filled by tenants that do cater to a younger crowd because now there's a reason for them to do it. Right now, if you did cater to that, you'd be like, as I watch the space, I'm not seeing a lot of kids and young energy here. If
Right.
anywhere, it would be across the street at the town green. So I would rather be over there. Well,
Hmm.
excuse me, we need it on both sides.
Hmm.
They are interconnected. They need to be considered Peachtree Corners downtown. Our downtown happens to be two distinct, unique halves connected by a pedestrian bridge. That's fine.
Hmm.
There are plenty of examples. I mean, the capital of Hungary, Budapest, is actually two cities, Buda and
Hmm.
Pest,
Right.
bifurcated by the Danube River. But over time, they came and they have their distinct, personalities and flavors and whatever. But same here. The forum, town center is a town center. They have unique stuff, but they are together. That is really our downtown. And we need to have both sides to have unique things to activate it. And the city is prepared to be a partner with a new owner to help ensure that that does in fact happen.
Hmm.
And we want to do it now before the glide path of this is such that you start seeing space get filled by tenants that we don't want to see it filled. Because let's remember something, there's going to be somebody who's going to buy this thing. And
Hmm.
selling these things is not uncommon. It was sold in 2016, I believe, was the current owner bought it in 2016.
Right.
So, it's not uncommon. These things change and new ownership comes in and they try to do it a different way, but at the end of the day they are filling empty space with tenants that pay a lease.
Hmm.
And when you add up all the lease revenue, it's got to exceed their operating cost and the
Sure.
note that they have on the property.
Yeah.
And to a degree, they are chasing numbers and they're not married to the community like us. And they'll fill some of the space with tenants that you just don't want to see at something like this.
Well, and I
So
don't know
there's
how
a
that would
level of
help.
that that we don't want to get down into. We want to nip it in the bud before we start seeing occupants of this thing that where you're like, oh, that's that's the first sign of a terminal illness.
Yes, for sure. I mean, I don't think people understand also it's like office buildings. There's grade A, grade B office buildings. There's a reason why they're like that because of the amenities and cost structure and all that. So having A listed, if you will, retail is better than having a B or C. And once you go, like you said, once you go down that road, it's hard to like pull that back. Um, where property
And
becomes,
Rico, I'll add one other thing too, and add that is, I think the forum is actually in a unique position to even steal back market share from, say, an Avalon. And here's why I say that: the Avalon's really, they have had some unbelievable success there.
Mhm. Yep.
But there are two complaints now when you go there from people. One is it's difficult to find parking. It's got so
Yeah.
much density
Hmm.
on it that some people avoid it because they're like, it's just not worth it. I drive around, I go in the parking deck, I'm, still looking for spots in the parking deck. By the time
Hmm.
I park, and I don't want to do it. That's one. And two is the public space at Avalon is way undersized as well. And so you
Yes.
get there,
Yes.
and then you're like, there's certain things that technically, like if you and I were, if I was going to go out there with my daughter and, and throw the frisbee around, I
Hmm.
couldn't do that there because there's too many people on the gathering space. Whereas
Yeah.
Town Green or the Forum could also have enough that you're not going to feel like, dang, I feel like I'm at a, concert because people are sitting like right here next to me.
Well,
I
yeah.
think we can actually reinvent the forum in such a way that we don't have such density that the parking's an issue, and
Hmm.
such density that the public space, we put public space on there, and it won't be such a crush of people that I think people will enjoy going there and saying, you know what, this is a better experience than even Avalon because of that.
I agree. And part of the proposal, I think, if I remember correctly, were two parking decks possibly that the city would be willing to fund, that there would be city parking decks, I guess, public parking. And that would take up the parking spaces that would be lost, if you will, for the expansion of green
Correct.
space within the forum, the heart of the forum, going straight
And
across.
that was one proposal that was thrown out
Hmm.
to say, hey, if the city was willing to help you recover lost parking that you
Hmm.
would lose by putting in green space, would you be willing to do that? And we didn't get to the point where we were discussing exactly who did what and how much.
Hmm.
But that type of thing is what the city's willing to do, because we do understand that in some cases for this thing to happen, these private companies have got to make the numbers work, and that's a big ask to
Sure.
have them,
Sure.
take perfectly good parking,
Hmm.
remove it, put
Right.
in green space, and then spend even more money to, you know, replace the lost parking
Yeah.
elsewhere on the property and all that. Because we get it. So the city's like, look, maybe there's a structure here that we can help partner and make this happen, and make it happen before it's too late.
Hmm.
That's why
They
we're
are
interested.
right, and some cities provide rebates, tax rebates, and stuff like that. This is essentially almost the same type of thing, but
And
right,
these
I
kind
mean,
of things can be structured all sorts of different ways. Like
right.
you said, abatements, rebates,
Hmm.
waivers of things. Absolutely. I mean, the parking deck of the town center is the city's, but yet
Right.
there are spaces in there that are specifically tied for use by tenants. Cinebistro has a guaranteed amount of space that if they wanted to, they could like secure it for a special event or whatever, but it's
Hmm.
in the city's parking deck. It's not an uncommon thing to do. So I don't know how this thing will get structured. The important
Right.
part here for anybody listening is A, the city recognizes the importance of the forum. B, the city is not going to sit back and cross our fingers and hope. C, the city, as a result, the city is prepared to be involved in some capacity to ensure that there is a reinvention of some of how the forum, some of how the forum operates and the amenities it has on there, so that it becomes again this cool place where people are like, man, have you been to the forum lately? They've really done X, Y, or Z. It's really
Right.
cool. Pretty soon all the space is filled again and there's an energy. And you're right,
Yeah.
Rico. Activity and
Hmm.
energy gets more activity and
That's
energy,
right.
and it feeds on itself.
Yes, for sure. And I think that the city can continue moving forward, not only with the forum, but as I know the city leaders and want to be able to look at other parts of the city, to be able to do the same type of things, where they
Yeah,
want to be able to, where other parts may need to be revitalized in a way, to bring back development that's exciting, that's energy producing, that people will look at, and I mean, it's like the Curiosity Labs at Peachtree Corners. I mean, it's just to provide the atmosphere to be able to have growth like that is important to the city. So yeah, I'm
it
all
is.
all
Yeah.
in on it. So,
We can certainly do this elsewhere, like you said. Redevelopment opportunities exist, but it takes two to do it. And in this case, it appears,
mhm.
given the interested parties in this bid, that the forum is going to get bought by somebody who is interested in partnering with the city. In some cases, when we reach out, they're not. They're like, look, we're not wanting to spend any more money. We're happy with
Right.
getting the revenue that we have as is. Thanks for the offer of doing something grander together, but we're good. And we
Yeah.
can't force them to. So, we have run into that in some of the other
Hmm.
places in the city that people may look at and be like, why don't they do that there? You're like,
Right.
we're trying.
Yes. Well,
We can't force the owner to do it. So anyway, that's what we got going on right now.
cool. Lots of stuff. And the new year is coming, and Christmas will be over soon, I guess. And 2022 will
Right.
be here, and hopefully, hopefully we'll be with the pandemic behind us at some point during 2022, and
I was gonna
things
say,
will.
Rico, if we were doing this a year from now, hopefully we don't have to use the C word as in COVID.
Yes. Hopefully not.
Ever again. I'm tired of it. We're
Yeah.
all tired of it. I mean,
Yeah.
good grief.
Yeah. Well, everyone, I appreciate you hanging in there with us and learning more about what's going on in this city. And Brian, I appreciate you helping us putting clarity to things here and giving us the information we need to know. Thank
Well,
you.
my pleasure.
Cool. Everyone, have a happy holiday. Merry Christmas.